Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the 71st annual Latke Hamantash debate. My name is Chase Harrison, and I'm a senior engagement intern at Hillel. We'd like to thank you all so much for coming tonight, and hope you can sit back, relax, and enjoy yourself despite the growing tension in the room between Team Latke and Team Hamantash. To get our program started for tonight, please welcome to the stage the University of Chicago's premier Jewish a cappella group, Rhythm and Jews.
Before, therefore, they didn't separate the dance floor. What a disaster! Their hearts beating faster. They invited all the guests.
Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding.
Hello to oh my, their good times were goodbye. What about the royal rabbis?
Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding.
Bum 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 ba-dum-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-da-dum.
Her father was vicious. Is this what your wish is? No barrier to become a whore.
But Rivka, she fainted, 'cause Shmuley ordained it. There's no rules about this in the Torah. Papa, we're trying to embrace these modern times.
Rivka, embracing is in fact a moral crime. Rivka, I don't see why you would risk it.
Papa, just sit down and eat your brisket.
Breaking the glasses while mingling the masses. Don't you know the definition of crass is? Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding.
Here is the spiel, the mazel meets the meal, and you're just gonna have to deal with
Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding. Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding. Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding.
The wedding was hopping with no sudden stopping. The great uncle leading the cargo. Despite Daddy's worry, the crowd was a flurry. Luckily, his fears were allayed. Moshe,
Most fun I've had since my 90s.
Yenta,
Most fun since the 1890s.
Mama, like this more than what we usually do. Rabbi, Bubbies are willing for boy checks and filling. The matchmaker would make a killing.
For mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding.
Putting down their bagels to make them Yiddish catcalls. Oh, so many naked angles.
Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding.
Benny, baby, don't you got a hand to it?
Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding.
Both the mishpuchas are shaking their tuchas. Funny just how long it took us.
Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding.
Here's to Shmuel and Rivka. Boy, do we forgive ya. Don't you know we're here to have an affair? So pull back your payas. All I can say is anything can happen when there's
Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding. Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding.
Mixed dancing at an Orthodox wedding. Thank you guys for listening. We are Rhythm and Jews, UChicago's premier and only Jewish a cappella group. If you like what you heard, you can find us on Spotify, and we will be recording an album in the spring. Thank you so much.
College students roam unmoored from traditions and values, where stress and nihilism reign unchecked. One woman dares to stand against it all. When we arrive on campus with no place to call home, she is waiting with lemonade in one hand and falafel in the other, fighting around the clock to imbue lives with Judaism and thoughtfulness. With a knockout smile and a built-in sidekick, ready to begin a meaningful Jewish life any minute now, she possesses a superpower so potent, so rare, and so awesome: the power of chutzpah. No challenge is too big and no holiday is too small. When students go running away from tradition following their bar and bat mitzvahs, her super magnetic force field pulls them back in. She is Rabbi Anna.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight, we come together to discuss Jewish superheroes. Well, actually, superheroes of the ancient world. The story of the origin of the Hamantaschen is not the most intuitive. If you're into conspiracies and connecting dots that don't exist, this one's for you. The story revolves around one of Judaism's most compelling superheroes. The original Wonder Woman is none other than Queen Esther. Esther is just an ordinary Jewish girl in biblical Persia until she hears King Ahasuerus is looking for a new wife. And Esther bravely enters into a 4th century version of The Bachelor in order to become queen. Her heart is of gold and her strategy is platinum. She keeps her Judaism hidden and dupes the king into thinking that her beauty is natural, but indeed it is a divine gift given to save the Jewish people. So now, this isn't Sunday school, so we need to be real. God granted her a superpower that brings a blush to even the most seasoned reality show watchers. It says in the Talmud, Megillah 13a, if Ahasuerus wanted to experience a virgin, he found it in Esther. And if he wanted to experience a non-virgin, he found that too. See? Torah study has its own share of intrigue. Anyway, The final rose is hers, and so is the throne. All is well in Persia until Esther's uncle Mordecai overhears a plot to kill the king, and Esther springs into action. Using her super smarts, Esther effortlessly saves the king's life, and each passing day, she becomes more and more powerful. Then enters the ultimate supervillain of Judaism. You know him. You hate him. Let's get a big hiss for Haman. He is no match for Esther. Haman has an evil plot to kill all the Jews in the land, and he gets the king's approval for it. Esther is conflicted. She thinks that maybe Judaism is her kryptonite, and she worries if she exposes herself that she will be put to death. However, she decides the risk is worth taking, and she reveals her faith. The king, still enamored with Esther, agrees not to kill the Jews, and Esther has saved the day. Now, we celebrate this victory every year by eating Hamantaschen and drowning out the sound of Haman's name during the reading of the story. Yet, it is unclear where Hamantaschen's true origins are. Some say they represent Haman's triangular hat. But the triangular hat fashion didn't rise in popularity until after Paul Revere made it a central fashion statement of a new nation. Massachusetts Bay Company, Rebel Collection, Spring 1775. Other interpretations point to Esther's heroism being derived from the three patriarchs, one on each corner of the Hamantash. And even another interpretation is that since Hamantaschen could possibly be translated as Haman's pockets in German, which are usually filled with deliciousness and flavor, that they represent the pockets of Haman full of ill-gotten gains. Whichever origin you think could possibly be an explanation, the most important aspect of the story of Purim are the hidden acts of bravery from a Wonder Woman of ancient times. Her superpowers are unique, but her effect on our history are unparalleled. Who do we find next as a Jewish superhero? None other than Judah Maccabee. He's a bit more mysterious. In fact, not much is known about the man that we call Judah Maccabee, but the things that we know may be more myth than fact. The Latke has earned some explanation. The story goes that Judah was born in a Judean village of Modi'in, the third son to a Jewish priest. His father, Mattathias, was a hero himself as he'd started a rebellion against the villainous king Antiochus, who ruled in the area and forbade Jewish religious practices. On his deathbed, Mattathias took his son and told him that it was his responsibility to lead the rebellion with filial piety. He took on the task. Talk about parental pressure. However, Judah took on the mantle of leadership and formed an ancient Israel Justice League, the Maccabees. They were outnumbered, they were out-equipped, but Judah nonetheless led the Jews to a series of stunning victories over the Syrians, and in time they beat the odds to win the rebellion. Judah Maccabee knew that this was a time for miracle and superpowers. The Rock of Ages needed to step in. No, Rock of Ages, God. Amidst the raging foes, no other than God could be our sheltering tower. So all was well, or was it? Judah returned to the temple to find it vandalized and filled with false idols. To start back the temple's function, they needed to re-engage the central symbol of the times, the continuous burning light of the menorah. Most of the oil they found was desecrated, but there was one single jar left, which experts were certain would only last a day. They waited, huddled around the menorah for light and warmth many hours, and one day passed, and the menorah stayed lit, and then another, and then another, and then 4 more days, and then another one. And yes, the menorah stayed lit for all 8 days, enough time for the Maccabees to acquire the necessary permits to drill for more oil in the nearby waters. Judah Maccabee's most sacred place, the Holy Temple, was desecrated, and his light was almost put out by his arch-enemies with the 2 core threats to his superpowers: foreign gods and trafe animals. Judah had both won the war and called a miracle to preserve the Jewish people. We honor the miracle of the oil by frying potato pancakes and eating them on Hanukkah. But we want to know more about Judah Maccabee. Where did he acquire his nickname? There are several explanations that have been thrown around. Some say that it is a contraction of the biblical words, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, a proclamation spoken by our people upon liberation from slavery in Egypt. This statement asks a rhetorical question: who is like God amongst all the others? And essentially, the answer is, our God is better than their gods, which is what so many holiday stories are about. Others argue that it means hammer, and unfortunately, this meaning has become associated with a movie that I cannot recommend. All that we know for sure is that the latke has a history as rich as its flavor, and that Judah has become a superhero, standing up for himself and his people against all odds. So, in honor of his bravery and his fighting, we sit at home with our Hanukkot by the window and eat highly caloric foods. To go back to Esther for just one moment, the rabbis learned from her the value of saying something in the name of another, as it tells in Pirkei Avot. Just as she reported to the king that Mordecai had discovered the intelligence about Haman, our tradition teaches that one who says something in the name of one who said it brings redemption to the world. And since we need some redemption right about now, I would like to give many thanks to the amazing students who helped with this presentation along the way. And without further ado, Hal Weitzman.
Professors, rabbis, students, alumni, Hyde Park notables, miscellaneous others. Welcome, probably for the 3rd time, to the 71st annual Latke Hamantash debate at the University of Chicago. 71 years. As Sir Elton John said when he participated in this debate in 1972, look it up. We're still standing. Yes. 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 My name is indeed Hal Weitzman, and I work at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business as the Executive Director for Intellectual Capital. I'm often asked what that title actually means. It's really quite simple. Not only do I set a direction for the school's intellectual capital, I also execute upon that direction. My first job as moderator is to report back on the results of last year's debate, to avoid any accusation that these are not completely kosher. I'm delighted to say that the results have been tallied and audited by PricewaterhouseCoopers, so there is no need for any questions about the results. And so I'm delighted to announce that the winner is La La Land. In all seriousness, the votes cast in last year's ballot were as follows. 93% of the ballots cast went to the Latke, 7% to the Hamantash. As most of you will know, however, the votes cast here tonight do not, strictly speaking, determine the final result. Instead, those votes elect a group of electors who themselves choose the ultimate winner. Now, this is a somewhat complicated process, so I won't bore you with the details here. Suffice it to say that the result was a landslide for the Hamantash. Congratulations to all concerned. That handsome victory explains why the Latke Hamantash Redistricting Committee, in its wisdom, determined that we should have 2 Hamantash supporters on tonight's panel and only 1 Latke proponent. Now, you might be concerned that this would make the debate one-sided. That's where I come in. As moderator, my job is to ensure these proceedings are completely impartial. I take this very seriously. Being simply disinterested is not enough. So my pledge to you tonight, dear audience members, is that not only will I be completely disinterested, I will also be completely uninterested. Although we have been going for 71 years, I am informed that there are some first-timers here. Welcome. You're in for a treat. Edifying, instructive, entertaining, cerebral. None of these words has been used to describe the Latke Hamantash debate. But it is at least warm in here and dark enough for you to slip out without anyone noticing. Among these newcomers, there are bound to be a few who do not even know what a Latke or Hamantash is, particularly if they weren't paying attention when Rabbi Anna Rosen explained it a few seconds ago. So for the sake of this joke, pretend you didn't hear that. Well, anyway, a Hamantash, yum, doesn't that look delicious? Is a 3-cornered cake or cookie stuffed with poppy seeds or fruit preserves and traditionally eaten on the Jewish holiday of Purim. A latke is a fried potato pancake, traditionally served on Bounty paper towels, as specified in the Talmud, probably in the same tractate that was referred to, and eaten on the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah. Quick note at this juncture on pronunciation. It's pronounced latke, not latke. A latke is a key from Latvia. And while we're on the subject, a knick-knack or trinket is a tchotchke, not a tchotchke. Tchotchke was actually the name of a short-lived Hasidic character on Happy Days. So far, so good. But you may ask, what is Purim? What is Hanukkah? Well, I am not a person learned in the sacred texts, but allow me to quote a beautiful teaching from Rabbi Avram Yonasan Kalman Nachman, Zivarn Levrocha, a sage of blessed memory who lived in the Russian town of Porkov at the turn of the 18th century, pictured here in this famous painting, which is clearly agitated by the fact that he is reading a book with no words in it. As is the tradition, Rav Baruch was known by the initials formed from his name as the Bacon of Porkov. In his most famous book of Torah exegesis, Akitzot Shel Bacon, in English, Bacon Bites, Rav Baruch wrote, and pardon my Yiddish here, Ligen in Drud und Backen Bagel, which roughly translates as Purim is the Jewish Halloween, and Hanukkah is the Jewish Christmas. It's traditional at the Latke Hamantash debate for the moderator to give an exposition involving gematria, Jewish numerology. Gematria attempts to uncover profound meanings from Hebrew words by attaching a number to each of the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, the Aleph Bet or Aleph Base, and manipulating them to extract some deeper significance. This is our 71st debate. And the number 71, fortuitously, is a highly significant number in Judaism. There were 71 members of the Sanhedrin, the priestly court of ancient Israel that decided the fate of important cases. In a way, our gathering here tonight is a form of Sanhedrin, assembled to decide not the fate of a random idol worshipper, suspected adulteress or false messiah, but a much more fundamental issue. Which of these foods is superior? But what about the gematria? What words have the same numeric value as our debate year? And here we have Elil, worthless, Amal, unfortunate, Nacha, worse, and Alili, God forbid. Not necessarily auspicious signs, but I'm sure we're going to have a wonderful time nevertheless. Our theme tonight is superheroes. Hollywood, I thought I might get a boo there. Hollywood would have us believe that a superhero looks like this, or if you're old school like me, like this. Of course, that's not real. We know that a real Jewish superhero looks like this. Yes, Bubba, the Jewish grandmother. Her special powers include bone-chilling disapproval, ability to cater to unexpectedly large numbers with substandard kitchen equipment, take no prisoners attitude, extreme nachas shepping, emotional blackmail, and radioactive hair dye. The Purim story, of course, has its own superhero, as we heard. Esther, the beautiful young Jewish woman who has disguised her identity in order to compete in an absurd Miss America-type marriage contest. She steps up at the final moment to reveal her Jewishness and save her people. It's an inspiring story. And I, for one, am comforted that at a time when we are governed by an unpredictable, capricious ruler, there is a beautiful young Jewish woman at his side. To advise him. Okay, enough of this nonsense. Let us introduce our speakers for tonight. We begin with Simeon Chauvel. Professor Chauvel is an associate professor of Hebrew Bible at the Divinity School here at UChicago. In one of his recent papers, he discusses how amazed biblical characters were that they could look in the face of the Almighty and survive. Tonight, we may discover how it's possible to stuff one's face with divinely inspired foodstuffs and also survive. Professor Chauvel.
Hello, fans. My name is Simeon Chauvel, and I'm here as special guest ringside with Rabbi Anna. Rabbi, thank you for inviting me to participate tonight in Latke versus Hamantaschen. Who Wants a Piece of Me? 71, 2017. Hosted by your sponsor, Hillel, Jewish paragon of peace. At the Mandelbread Hall and the glorious Reynolds Wrap Club of Sandwiches, where a bloody battle of the food fillings fill the holiday-less month of Mar Cheshvan with cheer and festivity. In corner one, representing the explicit miracles in the land of Israel of Hanukkah fame, the latke. When it's right, the latke is light on its feet, throws crisp punches to the palate, and hits heavy in the gut. But you never know when it's going to come in solid and soggy. In corner two, representing the hidden hand of history in the land of Persia and Jews the world over, of Purim fame, is the Hamantaschen. It's a bit older, several centuries, and seems kind of tired, but don't let that fool you. Despite so many attempts to replace it or improve it, it has soldiered on as is with gritty determination, year in, year out, a perpetual fan favorite. Do not get caught counting it out. Rabbi Anna, I've pulled a bit of a fast food one on you and invited a ringer. Let me introduce a food gladiator of biblical proportions, Simcha Chauvel. He comes from the land of Israel and will make the case for his favorite here tonight. Thank you so much, Simeon. Shalom. My name is Simcha Chauvel. If you come from Israel, please close your telephonim. I come from the land of Israel, and I will explain why latke is hands down superior to Hamantaschen. Or, as we say in Hebrew, the leviva is better than the oznei Haman. I am old school. I work with my hands. So I have no startup nation technologia here tonight. I hope this does not disqualify me. The essence of the latke is its oil, which reminds us of the great miracle of the oil. Its other major ingredient is the potato, the humble symbol of the working stiff, like me. Together, the potato and the oil say every person, no matter how poor, deserves to have their miracle. Let me tell you a story about these. Once upon a time, in the land of Israel, many thousands of years ago, there was a woman, a widowed woman, with one young son, who lived in the time of the great prophet Elijah. Elijah was holding off rain and making a drought to cripple the evil Israelite king Achav with ancient sanctions and get his point across that the Israelite God controls everything. It was Elijah's debut, so he came at it kind of hard to get a lot of press. Anyway, one day, Elijah, who had a wandering spirit and was just fine with asking working people for food, meets the widowed woman and asks her for some water. If you think he's looking for a wife and tests her to see how generous she is, you are wrong. That was someone else. He really wants water. So she gives him water. And you know how it is. Why stop with water? Then he went and asked for some food. Here the trouble begins. Like any good Jewish person, all her troubles come pouring out. She is poor. She has almost no flour and no oil to make even the most basic of wafers, just enough to make one crumb so she and her son can eat and die, and not on the emptiest of stomachs. How could she make anything for this wandering beggar Elijah? Elijah says, if you feed me first, you will have a self-replenishing supply of oil and flour, and so it happened. So, you see from this story about the oil of poor people's food that a little generosity makes the world go round, and everyone always has something to give. Let me tell you another story. This one is about the protege of Elijah, Elisha. One day there was another widowed woman, not with one child, this time two. She came to Elisha and begged for help. Like any good Israeli, she lived on credit, with a ridiculous overdraft. In ancient times, interest rates on personal borrowing were higher than your fanciest Platinum American Express today. And indentured servitude was completely legitimate. Anyway, so the bank sent a threatening letter to this fine, upstanding woman to warn her they were coming for her children in lieu of payment. All she had in the house was one teeny last drop of oil. Elisha, the protege of Elijah, said, borrow more. Borrow every possible container and jug from every possible neighbor and shut yourself in your house. Sure enough, all the containers and the jugs filled with oil and more oil and more oil until every container and jug was full. She paid the bank and kept her children and had enough left over to feed them for a long, long time. Once again, we see how oil is the heart of a message. This time, how people can pool their resources to make an unlimited supply, or how you can make money from other people's money and beat the banks at their own game. In any case, the oil of Hanukkah has a long history of miracles about lasting longer than it should. You also see that even though Hanukkah happened after Purim, the oil food of poor people in the land of Israel is actually older than the pouches of poppy seed of Purim in Persia. Oil got here first. Indeed, in the Bible, oil is considered as important as wine and bread. It is used like skin conditioner and suntan lotion on the body, from infant to ancient. It is one of the basic responsibilities of a husband to his wife: food, clothing, and oil. The wise man Kohelet says, a solid reputation is better than fine oil, not poppy seed, oil. Oil production was a staple of ancient Israelite economy. Families and even whole towns were producing it for nationwide distribution and even export. Rabbi Anna, pretty crisp puncher, the Simcha Shevel, wouldn't you say? What are Hamantaschen pockets of poppy seed? There are no wonderful miracle stories told of them in the Bible, no uplifting messages, no references to their wonderful qualities as a benchmark of culture. If you take a football or baseball player, you will test positive for opiates. The other element of Hamantaschen is the pocket. Pockets are for money. Tell me what hard-working kibbutznik likes money or needs it. These pockets are made of dough. Dough is made of yeast. Biblical tradition has an entire holiday, a week long, devoted to ridding ourselves of dough and yeast. One must do a complete spring cleaning, turning the entire house upside down, creating family fights and lifelong anxiety, just to be free of dough and yeast. You eat Hamantaschen and it is dry and crumbly in your mouth. You need a drink. That sweetness of poppy or apricot or strawberry, whatever, as we say in Hebrew, irsa. Let's not even get started on prunes. Oy vey. New scientific discovery surely will tell us the wonders of poppy and bleached refined flour, especially after genetic testing and modification. Yofi. I work the land with my hands and eat from that. So, oil and potato or dough and poppy? Dough bakes with hot air. No one likes people filled with hot air. Right, Simeon? Your students have told me all about this. Oil and potato sizzle. I sizzle like a butterfly and have seasoning like a bee. Well, Rabbi Anna, persnickety with a little punching below the belt, but there you have it. I think you have to call this a technical knockout. Hamantaschen has crumbled under the blows. Latke holds the belt high like a champ.
Okay. Next, we have Professor Ayelet Fishbach. She is the Jeffrey Breckenridge Keller Professor of Behavioral Science and Marketing at Chicago Booth. Professor Fishbach's research suggests people start and finish tasks strongly, but their attention tends to wane in the middle. Which leads me on to what I really want to say, which is that Professor Fishbach.
Thank you and good evening. And let me start by saying that my esteemed colleague is wrong. I mean, Hal, but also the one before him. Latke will win. I mean, Latke always wins, right? So let's think about it. Why Latke? Why do we all believe in Latke? And we'll support Latke tonight. Well, before we go there, however, we should consider another possibility, which is not only that people that spoke here to you before me are wrong, but basically all debaters before today were wrong. Okay, and everybody was wrong because they were not thinking about it the way they should, which is the way psychologists explore this problem. Okay, psychologists do not believe in preferences, at least not in the way you think about preferences. The idea of asking people whether they prefer a Latke or a Hamantash, well, that's wrong because that assumes that people have preferences. And I mean, really, do they? Well, not really. Okay? They are a function of the situation, the context. Let me give you an example. Many women wonder whether there are some men that prefer to aim while others not so. Or, maybe some men can better do that than others. Well, it turned out, according to research conducted by Amsterdam Schiphol Airport authorities, that all men aim better if you draw a fly in the urinal. Okay, that will also reduce your cleaning costs by 20%. So forget about some men aim, some don't. It's really the context. Okay, back to food. So far, in the last 70 or so debates, we were comparing a latke to a hamantash, but really, these are not the only Jewish foods. And we can think about adding another item to this choice set, okay, the gefilte fish. Okay, now research in psychology would tell you that once you add another more savory option, then almost everyone will go for the latke. Of course, I can also shift some people toward the hamantaschen by introducing another choice set. Now I included the Hanukkah donut that is covered with chocolate, and it's even sweeter and more dessert-like than the hamantaschen. This is the compromiser effect. People take what is in the middle. All right. Another reason not to trust people when they state their preferences, the tendency to like whatever we already have. Our most recent Nobel Prize winner, Richard Thaler, found a long time ago that if you give people something, they are very unwilling to give it up. If I were to give you latke and then ask whether you would be willing to give it back to me in return for a hamantash, well, most of you will say no. Once you have something, you kind of like it. I mean, this is how marriages last. And not to mention self-control. Okay, it turned out that latke and hamantaschen have different hyperbolic discount curves. I know I lost everyone at this point, so let me explain what I mean by that. Latke is savory, it's more of a meal. Okay, hamantash is a dessert. When people plan in advance, when they think about what they would like to eat, let's say tomorrow, most people would say, well, I will definitely go for the meal. I will choose the latke. However, at the point where this dessert is presented, some people for a very short period of time, but a critical period of time, say, oh, well, I'll go for the hamantash. They basically break down. Now, this is a serious problem because research in psychology tells us that people that cannot put aside the hamantash, okay, at age 5 are going to get lower SAT scores, are going to have less friends, they are going to have a higher BMI, and basically their life is going to be difficult. If you can just choose the latke today, your life will be better. All right. Now let's assume that there are preferences. Let's assume that people actually know what they want. Well, can they report it? Okay, can we just ask people to tell us hamantash or latke? Well, no, we cannot. Okay, we should never ask people because people don't know what they want. If people knew what they wanted, they would not wear heels. They would not wear ties, and they would not make the economic decisions that they make. Clearly, people do not know what they want. So how do we know that? Well, psychologists would find some implicit ways of measure preferences. For example, this is one of the most common ways social psychologists use to measure preferences. We ask people, what do you see here? Is this latke or good, or hamantaschen or bad? And we compare that to another question. What do you see here? Is this latke or bad, or hamantash or good? To the extent that you are faster to indicate that this is latke or good versus latke or bad, we know that you indeed like latke. Another way to measure preferences, given we cannot simply ask, is to ask people, how much do you see latke as part of who you are? Right? Is this part of your identity? To the extent that you indicate that there is a large overlap between the person you are and latke, then we say, well, here's a preference. Okay, we know you like latke. And if we measure preferences in this way, I can assure you that latkes will win. But they will win anyways. And they will win for 4 reasons. So let's assume that we can't trust the imprecise way in which we are measuring preference today, in which we are counting votes. Let me tell you why latkes will win. First, they are familiar. Okay, basically, we like what we know. Okay, I already made a joke about marriages, but it also applied here. Okay, we get used to something, we like it. Okay, some research showed that we like Chinese characters after we've seen them several times. Other research found that we like Turkish words after we've seen them several times. Other research tells us that the French people used to hate the Eiffel Tower. They thought that was the ugliest tower in town until they got used to it. Okay? And then they started to love it. Same thing for latkes. Latkes offer variety, and people love variety. They can be made, and I studied that, from potatoes, we know that, beets, sweet potatoes, squash, zucchini, and purple cauliflower. You can also serve them with yogurt, with cheese, with salmon, with applesauce, many ways. Let's compare this to the Hamantaschen. They do come in several shades, and as you all know, they all taste the same. No variety there. All right. Latkes offer sharing. Well, you can split a latke. You can eat it with a friend. You can eat it with a stranger, and then you will be friends. Okay? You cannot split triangles, not to mention crumbling triangles. Basically, latkes bring people together. They are your recipe for friendship. This is what keeps society, the latkes. And if I have not convinced you by now, my last argument is the latkes will win. And to the extent that we all expect that to happen, that will happen. Okay? Because expectations create reality. Okay? If you don't trust me, we call it in psychology the Pygmalion effect. Basically, this is the idea that once we believe that something will happen, it will happen. Take, for example, the well-known statistics that boys' SAT math scores are higher than girls, and many people try to explain that, and some people suggested that maybe boys are better at math than girls. Obviously, they never met a girl. What we know as psychologists is that girls know that boys are expected to get SAT math scores that are higher than theirs, so they let them have it. Okay, basically, once you expect something to happen, it does happen. So if we just believe latkes will win, they will win. All right, so basically, in this very short time, I tried to present 3 arguments. Preferences don't exist. You can't ask people about their preferences. And the most important thing, latkes will win. Thank you very much.
And our third and final debater tonight is Konstantin Umansky. He's an associate professor of surgery at UChicago Medicine. He's an expert in diseases of the colon. But until now, has been strangely silent on the contentious issue of the semicolon. Hopefully that will all change tonight. Professor Umansky.
Well, good evening. Today I will talk about the application of the Hamantash principle for port placement in robotic extralevator abdominal perineal resection. But before I begin, I would like to extend a special thanks to UChicago Hillel, and particularly to Rabbi Anna Rosen for the privilege to stand in front of you here on the podium in this legendary debate. For 2 years, there was not a single person on the stage debating for our Hamantash. We had 4 debaters last year, all for Latke. We had 2 debaters, 1 traitor, supposed to be Hamantash, but decided to switch over to Latke. So in my attempt to prepare for this debate, I excitedly told my friends, my colleagues, and my assorted relatives that I'm going to debate for the Hamantash, and everybody said I shouldn't do it. And I said, why? They said, you don't do it because Hamantash is not popular, don't you know? Especially on the college campuses. And I said, why? And they said, you go on the internet and find out yourself. So I did that, and I went to the internet, and this is just a bit of a redundancy, but I apologize. So Hamantash combines 2 words which have Yiddish-German origin, Haman and Tash, and which means Haman pockets. We already know that. So let's look a little closer to this character, Haman. I have a prop here, 1 second. Oh, here it is. Haman. Okay, so as Rabbi Rosen said, it had multiple negative characteristics, which include but not limited to, he was an archetype of evil, he was full of wrath, and worst of all, as previously stated, he wanted to kill all the Jews in ancient Persia, okay? So this information was available for almost 2,500 years, but only recently, on college campuses, this information became widely apparent. Many students voiced their concerns because they said, look, we do not like Haman because, you know, he almost killed the Jews many years ago. And because of that, they also said we don't want anything to do with the Hamantaschen because all of this reminds them of the time that Jews almost got killed. And they said to the college officials, they feel very, very offended by that. So the college officials do what the college officials do really well, is that they decided to remove the word Haman out of the word, making it just the word Tash, which is actually a nice way to resolve the problem, except there was a group of very concerned students who came forth and said, Tash looks remarkably like Tash, Tash.0, and he can be very offensive, so no Tash. So they said, okay, fine, how about we call it a Purim cookie? A Purim cookie, everybody said, okay, Purim cookie is fine, except the college atheists said, Purim cookie? We don't want any religious connotation in our pastries. So they said, okay, fine, let's not do that, let's just call it a cookie. and then the cafeteria lady said, we need more descriptors, we need more characteristics. We can't just say cookie because we will not know what people want, what kind of cookie. And they said, okay, how about we just call it a spring holiday pastry with filling? And everyone was happy. Everybody finally said, fine. But what about Hamantash? How did this make Hamantash feel? Well, the Hamantash felt increasingly more isolated and marginalized. And Latkes didn't mind it either, because they were hanging out in their own small social groups. And so that's how it went. Latke and Hamantash found themselves in their own social bubbles, listening to their own podcasts, reading their own newspapers. But what about the debate, you say? What about the famous Latke Hamantash debate? Well, some universities found a solution. They no longer invite Latke to the Hamantash debate at all, just making it the Latke debate. That way, nobody gets offended, colleagues, okay? But once in a while, a brave superhero, Super Batmantash, comes to the campus and says, woohoo, and says, can I debate? Some students really don't like that, just don't like that. But, you know, thinking about all of this, I wonder, what would my hero, George Orwell, say about it? I'm sure he, just to spite everybody, would just come to campus and say, I want to debate for the Hamantash. I want to push the freedom of speech and the liberty to its limit. I want to find out how it is. Well, not so fast, buddy Orwell. Because, you know, listen, something we're now starting to learn, that the freedom of speech not only guarantees for you to say what you want, but for anybody to heckle you anytime they want to. Or, if it doesn't work, they can use the rattle. Or sometimes they can even punch each other in the face. But that brings me to a Russian joke. And what lecture by the Russian Jew will be without an anecdote? So here it comes. The year was 1993. It was almost 25 years ago when our family was about to immigrate from former Soviet Union, from Russia. And this joke was quite popular among us at the time. And remember, just for historical purposes, I will refresh everybody's memory that in the United States at the time, the president was Bill Clinton. Okay. So the two astronauts in the space station, they're flying over the Earth. They stay in the space station. Not much is happening there because a lot of time is just a downtime. So they're looking down the porthole, making a conversation. An American sees an outline of North America and says, you know, in America, we truly have a freedom of speech. And Russian goes, how so? Says, well, in America, anybody can stand in front of a White House and shout, Bill Clinton is an idiot. Well, it applies to any president any time, but at the time it was that. And Russian goes, we also have a freedom of speech in Russia. Mm-hmm. Anybody can stand in front of a Kremlin and shout, Bill Clinton is an idiot. All right? So, which brings us back home to our wonderful university, our beautiful campus. Here, this is one of the last academic bastions of freedom of speech. Just look at our logo. You see that from the ashes of fun that came to die here a long time ago, rising a phoenix of freedom of speech and intellectual discourse. And lest we forget about it, we are reminded in the letter that my daughter, the freshman last year, was told, not only we're supposed to debate, but we're supposed to really debate, okay? Because here, we take the art of polemics really seriously, and here, we will make the Aristotle and Plato proud. But what do I, a colorectal surgeon, know about things like that? I just primarily cut and sew. I know I don't have a chance with learned academics, and so I just want to tell you a few facts about Hamantash in my humble attempt to share with you the knowledge and possibly convince you that Hamantash is better. On the first step of our journey, we go to a creation museum. It's not very far. It's only a short 4.5-hour drive to area right near Cincinnati, where I went to training. And it's actually in the suburbs of Cincinnati, across the river in Kentucky. And this museum is not a joke. It's a really serious museum. And you can enter it for a modest price of admission for $30 for adult, and $24 for senior, and $16 for child. And actually, younger children can come for free. And you can actually be prepared to believe. Now, what you will learn when you visit the Creation Museum, the following things. For example, that humans and various creatures lived in peace and comfort and harmony, including some dinosaurs, which are not shown here. And on the left side of the on the right side of the screen, you see those two individuals. They're not part of the exhibit, but they're clearly into it. So, but what I learned when I visited the Creation Museum is that God loves us, and God wants us to have Hamantaschen. Okay? Now, let me explain, because I know you might have some stretching the logic a little bit, but I'll explain to you. It will be clear in just a few short moments, okay? So here's in the Creation Museum, I learned that God made a man or a woman according to his or her image, which translates to this appearance, okay? So now we're looking at the product of God's creation. Now, I want you to notice, I don't know if this pointer works, but I actually use this little PowerPoint gadget. It shows that humans have above the kidneys, you know, those two bean-like structures, two things that look remarkably like a Hamantaschen, okay? They, you know, we call them adrenal glands, but in reality, they are actually human Hamantaschen. And if you look a little closer to the structure of a human Hamantash, you will see it looks remarkably similar to the actual Hamantash. In its structure, it has two components. A Hamantash has a crust and a filling, and the human Hamantash has a cortex and medulla. Now, those structures produce very important hormones that regulate different things in our body, physiological functions. And for the purpose of this discussion, I want to focus just on the cortex, because cortex itself is complex enough. So in the cortex, which is the crust of the Hamantash, located zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and zona reticularis. And we're skipping the medulla for the time being. Well, let's look closer at the products of the cortex. And this is just the cortex. We're not even talking about medulla, okay? So we're looking at the steroidogenesis. And I know we're short on time. I was told only 10 minutes. So I'll go straight to the important part, which is here, zona reticularis, which is the sex hormones are elaborated. Now, the cortex produces a very important hormone, which is a testosterone, through several changes to steroid. And then in ovaries, women turn testosterone into the estrogen. Now, those of us who know how testosterone works will not be surprised to see that the testosterone really produces amazing results. Okay, this is a view from the back, okay? And makes men really strong, and estrogen makes women beautiful, okay? So thumbs up for human Hamantash. And what do latkas do? Okay, well, let's look at this recent study. This recent study published in 2016 looks at the deep-fried food and its effect on rats, okay? Without going into the details of the study, suffice it to say that rats got extremely ill consuming deep-fried food. They had significant derangements in the glycerolipid metabolism, and their microbiome got really, really, really deranged. So the rats got ill. Interestingly enough, Chicago Department of Streets of Sanitation somehow saw this paper and in the stroke of an infinite wisdom decided to combat the rats problem by offering okay? You might be wondering, when am I going to talk about the Hamantash principle? Well, wait no longer. This time is now. So I do robotic surgery. I think that robotic surgery helps the mankind. And this particular machine is named after Leonardo da Vinci, even though he himself does not design this machine, but he put forth very important principles that later on, centuries later, were applied to build this beautiful functional machine. But before we talk about this machine, let's spend a few seconds talking about Leonardo da Vinci. Historians now agree that Leonardo da Vinci, a man of many secrets, codes, and cryptic messages, may have in fact belonged to the secret society, the Brotherhood of Hamantash Lovers. Our colleagues at Argonne National Laboratory wanted to see if this hypothesis would hold true because historians could not provide any evidence. And what they did is they beamed a really fast-moving particles through the picture of a Vitruvian man, which is considered to be the sort of the perfectly proportional human body. What they saw is the outline of a triangular-shaped object. When they beamed faster moving particles, even still, it was clear, visible that it was a Hamantash. So Leonardo da Vinci built the perfectly proportional human person based on the shape of a Hamantash. Across the campus, if you will, we were struggling to determine how to place instruments for the robotic surgery. And we were thinking about the proportions, the geometry, the arrangements of the ports, until this information from the Argonne laboratory came through, and we said, Hamantash principle, let's put it just like Da Vinci wanted to do, and we did this. And this resulted in a major surgical breakthrough. A paper published recently, and this is the application of the Hamantash principle that really helped the mankind. Now, notice in the title, we did not really say the Hamantash principle. You know why? Because among the editors and publishers, there's always a Latke lover, and we didn't want it, and we didn't want the paper to be rejected, so we didn't say that. But the surgical virtues of the Hamantash do not end here, because surgeons constantly have to hone their skills and the manual dexterity. You wonder how? Well, by making a Hamantash. Okay? And here at the University of Chicago, we developed a validated scoring system to see how well the residents perform the tasks. Some of them have difficulty with pinching. Some of them make the dough too thin, and spillage of the filling is really considered to be a failure, so they must remediate. But let's step away from all the medical things. I know it can be a little tiring, and look at the things around us. Well, I'm sure Rabbi Anna will appreciate this. You know that one of the oldest and most enduring symbols of Judaism, the Mogen David, the Star of David, only recently it became apparent that it was inspired by a plate of Hamantash. In case you're wondering, Latke probably would not inspire any of that, right? Or many of you who got here by transportation saw a sign on the road that looks like this. What do you think the sign says? It says, "Yield, please," because it wants you to be courteous and polite and let other person go in front of you. Why? Because it looks like a Hamantash. Would you ever let anybody go in front of you if the sign looked like this? I don't think so either. And we haven't even talked about fillings. Fillings are an important part of the Hamantash. They can be different preserves and jams, but the oldest and the most popular is a poppy seed filling. Poppy seeds contain small, very small, but not insignificant amount of morphine and codeine. Are very, very potent painkillers. Looking at the function of the actually poppy seed on the mu-opioid receptor, you will notice that binding of the poppy seed Hamantashen to the G-coupled protein receptor results in very strong phosphorylation that triggers downstream signaling through the MAP kinases, through the ERK, P38, and JNK, which this is highly effective signaling cascade, results in significant pain reduction that has been recently shown by the very nice study using a functional MRI, showing that cortical pathways have been significantly inhibited by the consumption of the Hamantash. But does this study really have clinical application? Well, in this interesting paper that was published in the Journal of Anesthesiology, you can clearly see that okay, let's talk about prunes. I'm a colorectal surgeon, and I love prunes. Thank you. So prunes, here's the study. I'm not making this up. This is a real study. You can look it up. That shows, based on the systematic review, the effect of prunes on the gastrointestinal function. It was indisputable proof that they actually work. The prunes appear to be superior to psyllium for improving stool frequency and consistency. And if you don't believe this study, here's another one. Now, this is a study that based only on case series and anecdotal evidence, but I still think this is a very well done study. Now you wonder, can Latke do that? I don't think so. Yeah. Okay, but even a wonderful Latke sometimes gets in the hand of an evil dictator. Oh, excuse me, Hamantash, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I got carried away. Even a wonderful Hamantashen gets in the hands of an evil dictator who wants to use it for evil purposes. Let's look at this footage.
Supreme Leader. Nadal. We are just months away from refining weapons-grade uranium, and we are set to test the missile next week.
It is too round on the top. It needs to be pointy. Round is not scary. Pointy is scary. This will put a smile on the faces of the enemy. They will think that it is a huge robot's dildo flying towards them.
No, Supreme Leader, the shape of the missile top has nothing to do with aerodynamics. It is about the payload delivery.
No, it sticks in the ground and then kaboom.
Supreme Leader, I think perhaps some of your information about bombs is coming from cartoons.
Nonsense. They were research films. And in them, the victims of the bomb would get very sooty faces, and then a see-through version of themselves started rising up towards heaven while playing a harp.
In this film, just one question, was there a duck who, when the explosion happens, his bill goes around the back of his head, and then in order to talk, he has to put it back this way?
There was somebody who suffered a deformity like that, yeah.
Okay. I am now 100% sure that you are watching cartoons. Believe me, sir, if I could make the device even a little more pointy, I would, but I simply cannot.
Okay. You know what? Let's just agree to disagree, my friend.
Okay.
Well, you know what happened next. They mounted a Hamantash on top of a rocket to make it more pointy. That was a little bit of a problem. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We may never agree. That is true. But let's agree to disagree. And thank you very much for giving me the time.
Good evening. My name is Julia Siegel, and I'm the chairman of the Student Advisory Board at Hillel. I must say, I was thoroughly impressed by all of our debaters tonight. We're so glad you could join us for the 71st annual Latke Hamantash debate. This great debate originated in the Hillel building on Woodlawn and has since grown and changed over the years, becoming a world-renowned tradition. You can now find similar events at safety schools, such as Harvard and Yale. We have also recently learned that the JCC in Krakow runs its own debate, and even some UChicago alumni there have begun working on a documentary highlighting the international variations of the debate, which continue the tradition of rigorous inquiry. This year, we are excited to have parents and alumni gathering in both New York and Los Angeles, watching with us right now, and we want to thank them for their dedication to the life of the mind. I would also like to thank our esteemed debaters for their compelling presentations. Also, thank you to Jen Kennedy and the staff of Reynolds Club, including Jess for helping us stage manage the show. Thank you to Carl Fogel on the piano and all of the student volunteers who made this event possible. Also, a special thanks to Dahlia LaFell for her work on designing this year's event. Now, we invite you to join us and the Brothers of AE Pi for a Latke Hamantaschen tasting in the Hutchinson Commons for a small donation of $5. You can now judge for yourself which is better, the Latke or the Hamantash. As we conclude, I now take the time to urge you to vote. Please vote. Decide which one is better. Also, please remember to stay seated as our debaters exit the hall. Now, I would like to invite Hall Weitzman back to the podium to announce the debate's newest tradition that I'm sure will become a time-honored part of the event.
Okay, I think we've done that, right? Wow. If I could only take this off, I would tell you how inspired I am. Aren't you? Oh, what a wonderful evening. Oh, what a light lively debate. I've got a wonderful feeling everything's going to be great. Oh, debaters have argued with passion. Please join in, either for latkes or Hamantaschen. They think they've resolved it for once and for all, but the audience slept 'cause it's warm in this hall. Oh, what a wonderful evening. Oh, what a lively debate. I've got a wonderful feeling everything's going to be great. Oh, professors have argued with vigor, with analysis, theory, and rigor. And some of us may have laughed until we cried at the place chiefly known as where fun comes to die. Oh, what a wonderful evening. Oh, what a lively debate. I've got a wonderful feeling everything's going to be great. So continues this still great farrago at the University of Chicago. And though we may think we have brand new ideas, we've been recycling them for 71 years. Oh, what a wonderful, come on! Oh, what a lively debate. Slow hand clap. Everything's going to be great. Oh, it's cold now, so put on your gatkers. Time to eat Hamantaschen and latkes. This is Illinois, so as you will note, you'll have to pay $5 to buy a vote.